Here's a demo with a bit of solar flair to it. I want to take text and graphics and combine them together in a shapes layer to create an effect like this. Now, how do we do this? Well, we're going to start this project with a standard setting of text here, editable text. As you can see here, I can place my cursor into the text and edit this text. This is how we would start the project, but we're going to convert this text to a shapes layer so we can create special graphic effects. Moving up here to my arrow tool, selecting here because we're going to use that in a moment. Then moving over here to my layers menu and down to type and over to convert to shape. Of course, I have the layer of text selected in the layers palette. Then I can convert it to a shape. Now it looks quite similar, but it's quite different. We now have two parts to this text layer. The first part here on the left, if I double click on it, reveals that I can fill this text with any color I want to, simply by clicking here on my color palette. I'm going to select cancel because I want black text for this project. Here on the right represents the Bezier curves and outlines for this text. It's no longer editable as standard text, but we can move this around as a graphic. Notice that when this is truly targeted, a checkbox appears here, which can dismiss this as a targeted graphic by clicking on it. But in this case, I want to target the graphic and make sure it's highlighted. Before you can select this with the arrow tool, it must be selected like this. You can always tell by this checkbox appearing here or a small little selection around the edge, as you can see. So now I can actually click and drag over the text I want to move and readjust. In this case, I want to move two sections of this graphic over each other so they overlap. Now we're ready to have some fun with this. Here in the options bar, you notice that there are 4 variations here listed for the way graphics interact with each other. If the graphic is currently selected, then we can adjust it with these 4 selections. In this case, I know I have to select both solar and eclipse because I want to adjust them together. The technique I want to use in this case is here, this last one, exclude overlapping shape areas. Watch when I click this and then zoom in on this area here. You can see that the overlapping areas are excluded, and in this case reversing out white. Let me double click on my hand tool to go to a full view, and then I'm going to select with the arrow tool again just the word solar so you can clearly see this. As I move this over other sections, you can clearly see how it's reversing out only in the areas that it overlaps. We're using that to our advantage for a design element here. Now, it's time to add our additional shape, the shape of the sun, to this graphic. Moving over here to my tool palette, I can select here the ellipse tool by clicking and holding and dragging out to the tool I'm looking for, or I can select it here from the options bar, any of the default shapes. This is where it gets tricky. In order to add this shape, to integrate it into the design, we must make sure that the design is selected. Again, watch the edges of the text. Here is not selected, and here's selected. Also notice that these graphics appear here in the options bar and are available to you when it's selected. Now we're ready to draw our graphic onto this image. But wait, you've got to be very careful. Notice here in the options bar, the current selection is to create new shape layer. That's not what we want to do in this case. What we want to do is select here, exclude overlapping shape areas. Again, selecting this, then moving into our work area and clicking and dragging across the image. I'm holding down the Shift key to constrain this ellipse to a perfect circle. I'm also holding down the spacebar key so I can readjust the position of the circle before it draws to the screen. Letting go of the spacebar key and still maintaining the Shift key down, I can adjust the size of it. Really nice capability for readjusting the position exactly where you want it. Then letting go and my graphic appears. Notice, like the text earlier, by selecting this fifth element here, this exclude overlapping shape areas, it then reverses out the text only in those areas where the two overlap each other. Also notice that the graphic is self-contained into one layer set. Excellent. You could go back in with the arrow tool in this case and select an individual graphic within this entire set, and you can still move this. For example, here I'm doing it with the arrow keys, or you can go to the edit menu and free transform this shape to readjust it in any way you want it. Let's do a little readjustment there. That looks great. Let's hit the enter key. We're now ready to move forward to our third and final element within this design. We want to add a layer mask to combine in a little bit of gradient into this. I'm looking for a solar flare, Bailey's beads forming along the edge of this solar eclipse. All I do now is move over here to the layers palette one more time. With that layer selected, I'm going to add a layer mask here from the base of the layers palette. Notice this, a third element has appeared. This is the layer mask. I'm going to select a gradient here from my gradient tool in my tool palette. Moving up here, I have previously selected the diamond gradient. And of course I have black and white as my foreground and background colors. All I do now is move into this area of the image. Here along the edge of my solar eclipse, I want a little flare. I'm clicking and dragging and putting in a little flare along the edge. I want to deselect the current selected region. I'm going to select the background in this case so the little lines do not appear anymore. So there's my Solar Eclipse 2006 graphic design created from the combination of shapes layers with a layer mask. So gradients combined with hard edge graphics. Experiment with these techniques to create simple and quick graphic effects.